Hey, let's ask Alice in Wonderland. How far? Look, when you take the red pill, we go all the way down to the bottom of the rabbit hole.
You took it. I was going to tell people before we get into Title 4D, before we get into all this, do you want the red pill or you want the blue pill? If you want the blue, you need to leave. I'm giving you, because once you hear this, it changes your thoughts on what's going on. And there might be a guy sitting there saying, I'm just paying too much in child support, or I'm not being able to see my kid. That's all I want to do. I want to hear my story. You need to hear this. It goes beyond your story. This is the reason why your story exists, guy.
And these guys think it's only their county. They think it's only in their county or in their city. This happens nationwide.
And not even just nationwide. I was talking to callers from Canada just a couple hours ago and hearing their version of Title 4D. A lot of these states operate the same. Australia is almost identical to the states, sometimes worse.
Yes.
Sometimes worse. So
because they pattern themselves after our income producing property state scheme for the states. States, by the way, Title 4D that is under Social Security, it was originally created in the 70s, and it was originally created to provide a means of collecting funds for, brace yourself for this, for welfare recipient single mothers. And the goal was, in my opinion, to minimize how much of the states and government's finances, which are really taxpayer money, would be used for supporting and caring for the kids. Now, that sounds good up front. And by the way, in that time, it was a means tested program, which means you had to be broke enough and you had to qualify at a standard that was verified, that you needed the help and that you couldn't collect and get the money on your own. So this was supposed to be a stopgap to, quote, keep them from living on the taxpayer dole. All right. But then in the let's say 95 to 98, President William Jefferson Clinton, aka Slick Willie, and there are reasons that he's called that, but we won't get into that. All right.
You play a good saxophone.
Yeah. And what did he said? He did not have sex with that woman. She had sex with him. Yeah, that's Slick Willie, right? Okay. But
you bringing Monica into this. That's wrong.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Go ahead.
But look, he signed some legislation that modified Title 4D and it created what they call the Personal Work and Responsibility Reconciliation Act. They call it POWER, PWORA, etc. And during that time, they created some very profitable incentives for the states to modify their laws to set up child support enforcement agencies in each state. And they had to modify their state laws in order to accommodate this private contract, quote, private contract using state dollars and federal dollars to, quote, keep people off of the public dole. Sounds great at first, but then states started expanding the program to where it's no longer now just about supporting welfare related cases or temporary assistance for needy family cases. Our tax dollars that come out of our paychecks are financing the very program that is used as an incentive to minimize how much parenting time that we get with our kids so that they can set the maximum child support, establish an income deduction order. So now we're going to make you pay it through the Child Support Enforcement Agency. We're going to charge you a fee for it being used to go through that agency. And then we're going to use taxpayers' dollars and reimburse the state 66% of the administrative costs. And we're going to set up a bonus system for the state so that if they do a great job collecting year over year better than they did the last year, they get to participate in a $500 million bonus pool. And
Texas wouldn't do that, would they?
Every U.S. state would do that.
Really?
And some states have gotten better at it. None better than California, by the way.
California really? I thought
dragged
Texas was
in
worse.
more than $1 billion
per
year. Billion. But let me tell you some of the dangers for this. All right. So on one hand, you see the impact, what happens when kids don't have the guiding hand of their father in their lives, those committed, willing, and able fathers who are fit, capable, but they're just being held out by process and this non-law court. By the way, family court is not a court of law. You can look it up and find out for yourself. Family court is called a court of equity. However, if you are dealing with a child support hearing, in most cases, that is a child support magistrate, and that person who was in that proceeding in most cases is not even a judge. Let me say that again. Not even a judge. And when you and I don't know how the system works, we will submit ourselves under jurisdiction to that private high conflict collection agency. And I call them high conflict because they are not there really to help the mother. They are not there really to help the child. It is there to really ensure that money gets transferred from point A to point B and that they get their cut. Doesn't that sound like the house at Vegas?
It does, but it brings me to this other conversation, Title 4E. Yeah. Wait, look. We don't have enough time for it. Okay, we don't have enough time for it. That's it. Carnell asked me. He's like, "How much time do you want on the show today?" I was like, "We'll try to stick at an hour," because I had him on there for like 2 or 3 one time, and those are long podcasts. But guys, this thing goes.
Recommend deep. Something for people who want to get deep in the rabbit hole, because there is a great lady who I met named Molly Olson, with the Centers for Parental Responsibility out of Minnesota. Met her in DC with her husband some years back. You want to go on YouTube and look up. She has the history for the whole Title 4D broken down and how it got expanded. Because why that's important, if you want to learn how to change it, you got to know where things went wrong. And at this level, we want to bring about discussions with our U.S. congressmen and our U.S. state senators to make modifications so that the states modify these programs so that it is only for its original congressional intent. And that was to help those families who were either at risk to be driven into poverty if they didn't get the child support collected and paid, and those who were so poor that they would be a major financial burden on the taxpayers. But currently, this thing has been expanded to include the middle class, the upper middle class, and if somebody like Kanye voluntarily agrees to pay it through the child support agency, child support enforcement agency, they will actually count that $1.24 million a year that he pays as part of their annual reporting. And guess what? There's also a negative connotation where they collect money and don't distribute it. It's called undistributed collected funds. And guess who gets to keep the interest off all that money? And until somebody asks for that money, it doesn't get paid. And it doesn't get sent back to you.
So how does this system operate like this without anybody trying to do anything about it?
Well, here's what I say. The fox will say there's nothing wrong with him stealing hens out of the hen house. In fact, what doesn't get monitored doesn't get evaluated. If there's no, I like to say, if there's no audits periodically, annually, biannually, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, you don't really know what's going on. All you know is you get a sense of, is something not right with this? Man, why are they fighting me over me getting to see my kids more than once every other week? I was good enough to see the kids 7 days a week when we had the same address. Now suddenly me and my kid don't have the same address and there's a problem with me all of a sudden. I supported everybody.
So there might be somebody that saw the thumbnail and there was like, they were going to talk about, Kanye. Now, how does this all flow together, Carnell? Now you're talking about because of the way Kanye was doing this, that they're going to make 66%. That's going to get there. So they're going to have what, 1 point something million dollars
that'll flow through. Look,
it's going to flow through
their system. So if he doesn't pay that money directly to Kim, I haven't seen what his order looks like, but sometimes guys think they're doing a great thing by agreeing to pay through the child support system. I was like, man, you're inviting conflict in your life when you just as easily could use Cashapp, Venmo, Zelle, and you pay the child support directly to her, and you have a record of proof that you paid it and what it was paid for. Man, there's some great resources out there, like the lead attorney on the YouTube. He has a great video on a bunch of mistakes that men make in overpaying their child support. And I've said this to you before, Eric. There's a lot of times that us guys get confused and manipulated emotionally. We think that if we pay more money, it demonstrates we're more responsible and how much we love our kid.
And the family courts know that.
Yeah. And by the way, they'll use that our desire to be a provider protector will get used against the good guy. And then they'll attempt to shame him and try to cast him into the category. And they use this loose term of deadbeat dad when it's a complete lie. Because a lot of those guys who I've met and looked at their cases, the guys that they're calling deadbeat dads, some of these guys have never made more than $15,000 per year, but yet he's got a child support bill of over $60,000. When if the kid lived with him, he would never possibly spend $60,000 almost in the lifetime of the kid. So how do these numbers get created? They create things called imputed income. They look at how long the guy's been working. They look at what field he's in, and they ignore economic data about, are there jobs in his field right now? Because let's say you worked in manufacturing and a huge number of jobs got shipped offshore and shipped to China, well, your entire industry was affected. So when your job left you and your skills were something very specific, you don't have a replacement job. Now you got to go get retooled, re-educated, retrained for something else. However, we're not going to give you a break on your support payment because you need to just get out there and work 3 8-hour jobs so that you can make the payment for what you used to do. And until you pay that money, I tell you what, we're going to put you in jail for 180 days and we'll let you out when you raise the money. Now, we're not violating your rights. We're putting you in jail because you're not following the court order. Now, doesn't that sound like some word salad to you?
Oh, it definitely does, man. I mean, we're almost at the halfway mark, Carnell, and I want you to hear some of these voicemails. I got a victim of paternity fraud that you're going to hear on here, and I've had several this week, and I wish he would have been on here. The perfect person. If you guys want to know more about that, Trapped by Law, Stop Paying Child Support for Paternity Fraud. Great book. I got several copies over here myself. Guys, if you got some voicemails on this, 762-441-0281. Thank you for everybody that's been participating. But if you've been listening for the past 20 minutes and he's talking about this thing, Title 4D, and I understand it's very complicated and some people don't follow. I mean, in a brief nutshell, if we could give it as small as we could, Carnell, it sounds like there is an incentive for them to award the least amount of time for whatever parent makes the most amount of money, which sometimes is going to be the woman, which you see a lot of these celebrity women that are making more money now because they pay the max in child support and then that goes back to the state. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the state makes profits off of it, not directly, but indirectly, because they'll make money off the fees because when you pay through that program, the state's not going to pay those fees, those transaction fees.
Processing.
You are. And if there's multiple states involved, like your ex has moved from your home state. So now let's say you started out in New York and now your ex is in Florida. That's 2 states involved now. So there's a processing fee for New York and for Florida. You get to pay both of those. And that's added on top of the child support payment, which is why there's an extreme disadvantage if you agree to pay more than what the law says you have to. I'm in agreement with the lead attorney here. Don't be duped into believing how much you love your kid with how much you pay. Those 2 things have nothing to do with each other. And dadgummit, if you agree to do more, you should agree to do more on a contingency of actual parenting time with your child. I will do this while the child is in my custody with me. Now, if a child's not allowed to be in my custody, then these extras go away.
That's it, man. And Kanye, I hope you was hearing that. I hope it makes you go from west to east, go in the opposite direction of what you're doing
Absolutely.
now. That was a horrible dad joke.
Otherwise, it's ATM, auto cash to mom.
I
There's
love
zero
it.
accountability of how it's spent. There's zero record keeping required. And if mom takes a trip to Europe for 2 weeks and drops her kids off at her mom's house and the money goes with her to Europe, there ain't much you can say about it.
ATM. I love that one. I'm going to have to use that. But you also said Sam. I had never heard that.
Yeah, that's the acronym for stay-at-home mom.
But then I got to thinking about it. It's like, if that's Sam for her, then it's sad for dad.
Yeah. But guess what? If we had a presumption of a rebuttable presumption of equal shared parenting at the beginning, because let's think about it. When you lived at the same address with your kid, it was equal. Hello.
There you go.
I dare say in many cases, if dad was the higher income earner, dad was providing the very ability for her to be a stay-at-home mom. But it is darn near impossible for a non-custodial parent to support both households at 100% of the same level as he did or she did when it was one household. In other words, 100% of the money that it took to finance one household in the beginning, you can't sustain two new households at the same level after the split of the relationship. And he shouldn't be required to. Now, I'd be okay with some, providing interim support to help mom get skilled and trained, and she must get herself a job, and that she must be ready to do it with a fixed time limit. So you're going to have to get after it. You know what I mean? If she's no longer in my last name, I don't owe her a thing. If she doesn't live at my address, I don't owe her a thing. If it's so difficult to take care of the kid, give me my kid. Hello.
With you, brother.